This afternoon, we have two interesting men to discuss or to consider. First off is a man named Melchizedek. Melchizedek. Now, if you were to do a little search on a Bible app or something, looking for Melchizedek, you will find a few different verses, but you'll also find that most of the verses that mention him simply mention him. That's it. Give no sort of, don't say anything about him per se, except for the beginning, the first, at least in Bible order, the earliest, which is Genesis 14, verses 17 through 20, where we meet him. He just pops up, seemingly out of nowhere, and then he just disappears, seemingly into nowhere. And then he's never mentioned again until he's referenced in the Psalms, in a psalm, Psalm 110, and then he's going to be referenced again based on that psalm in the book of Hebrews. Who is Melchizedek? Well, I'm just going to read the verses first where we run into him. It's in the life of Abraham, okay? When Abraham has to go and save Lot for the first time, saves him the first time. Abraham didn't go and save him the second time, but he is responsible for God sending an angel to save him. But Abraham and Lot separated in chapter 13, Genesis 13. Chapter 14, Lot gets into some trouble, and Abraham goes to save him, which he does. So he saved him with some, physical strength and might, military might, you might say. And then here's what we read at the end of chapter 14, beginning of verse 17. After his return from the defeat of Kedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, that is the king's valley. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. That's it. That's the Melchizedek's portion in the scriptural narrative. We learn a couple of things explicitly about Melchizedek here, and we learn some things that are implied. By the way, his name means king of righteousness or king of justice. That's what Melchizedek means. And we're going to focus on him as it says here, the man who prefigured Christ's priesthood. Because the other times that it's mentioned, it says, you are a priest after the order of Melchizedek, as the psalm says. And then in the Hebrews writer refers to that psalm as messianic. So Christ is a priest after the order of Melchizedek, and we'll take a few minutes to meditate on that here in just a second. But what do we learn about Melchizedek from Genesis chapter 14? Well, he was the king of Salem. Here's the problem with Salem. It is not 100% certain what that is. But there is a city that came to be known by a name that has that name built into it. Yeah, Jerusalem. Jerusalem. And it is believed that may be what it was, what Salem was at this time. Now, he brings out bread and wine. A lot has been made of that. Okay, I'm not going to make a lot of that, at least today. But I will make something of this, a very interesting statement. He was priest of God Most High. Now remember, this is We're talking Genesis 14. Moses, nowhere near being born yet. The law of Moses, nowhere near being instituted yet. The priesthood, nowhere near being instituted yet. And yet, this man named Melchizedek, who was the king of Salem, is called priest of God Most High. There's only one God in the Bible who is ever called God Most High, and it's Jehovah. It's the God of Abraham. So that's who Melchizedek was priest. He's the priest of Yahweh, Jehovah, at a time that we didn't even know there was such a thing. Pretty interesting. There's not really much more we can say on it, but it is interesting. What did that entail? What does it mean that Melchizedek, all the way back, remember, as far as the Genesis record goes, Abraham was just called by God to leave in chapter 12. I mean, it's the plan of God has more or less just kicked off, but there was already some sort of office of being priest of God. And we're not told about it ever. But the interesting thing is that whenever the psalmist says, and by the way, just so we can finish up with the Genesis part, that's what we learn about him explicitly. He was king of Salem, and he was a priest. The ESV says priest, not a priest, and not necessarily the priest, but he was priest of God Most High. Now, not so directly, we learn something else about him in the fact that, first of all, he is not blessed by Abraham, but he blesses Abraham. And then second of all, he does not give anything to Abraham, but Abraham gives a tenth to him. Which shows his greatness, his maybe we might even call it superiority over Abraham even. So whoever this guy was, by the way, who are Melchizedek's parents? Not mentioned. I won't go so far as to say he didn't have any, but as far as the text is concerned, we're not told. Who was his heir? Not told. Where'd he come from? No clue. As far as the narrative is concerned, like I said, he just pops up. He's already there, and then he just poof, there he goes again. 3 verses is all it is, really, 18, 19, 20. But what's interesting is, rather than referring to the priesthood of, the Levitical priesthood, rather than referring to the priesthood of Aaron, the Aaronic priesthood, it's called, not error, but Aaron, IC, the priesthood of Aaron. The psalmist says, attributed to David, "You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek." Not after the order of Levi, not after the order of Aaron, but after the order of Melchizedek. Now when we turn to Hebrews chapter 5, and we see this brought up again, and in reference to Jesus, that shows us that the Holy Spirit is connecting Christ's priesthood with Melchizedek's priesthood, which opens up kind of a whole can of worms here. What is it about Melchizedek that makes him a type of Christ? Okay, there's one. Priest, king. Now,
that couldn't have happened through Levitical priesthood because they had to be Levite, and the king came through one of Judah. So, like through Mosaical law, he couldn't have been both. Jesus couldn't have been.
yeah. Mm-hmm. He certainly couldn't have been a priest under the law, in an earthly sense. because he wasn't from Levi. So for Jesus to be a priest on earth would be for Jesus to break the law of Moses, which is a fact that some people, I think, may overlook on purpose or ignore. Joe, do you have something?
Well, can a human be king of righteousness and king of justice?
It's the same thing.
Well, not quite.
Well, it is. I mean, the words, they mean the same. Just is a synonym for righteous in some Bible trend.
Making right decisions
Yeah.
is what a justice is. But righteousness means that you don't sin.
Well, that would be perfect, right? I mean, ultimate righteousness, I guess. Perfect righteousness.
Isn't that what his name means?
Well, his name means the king. I think Zedek is king. It's his name. Your Bible might have it hyphenated. Melchizedek, and I think Zedek is the king part, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. I might have them the other way around. But either way, king of either righteousness or justice. That's just what his name means. Now, as to what reflection that has on his character or being, we don't know. Because like I said, we're not told anything about this man. We don't know what kind of man he was. We don't know if he was a good man. We can assume he was a good man because he was priest of God Most High. So, I mean, most of what we can say about him is implied or inferred from what we're told about him. But the fact that the Hebrews writer skips over Levitical priesthood, because again, Jesus is not a Levite, was not a Levite, is not a Levite. He skips over Aaron, but he was a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. So Hebrews chapter 5, verse 6, for instance, this is one of Joe's favorite verses, actually, because this is where he says, as he says also in another place. Joe loves that because it makes her feel better whenever she can't remember where it was. Yeah, he didn't know where it was either, but it's somewhere, And by the way, yeah, that other place is Psalm 110:4. Psalm 110, verse 4. So he says in another place, he says, Christ didn't exalt himself to be made a high priest, but was appointed by him who said to him, you are my son, today I have begotten you. As he also says also in another place, you are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. So here's some things we might take from that. Melchizedek, we have no record, and I'll be careful to say, I'm not saying that nobody made him a priest. I'm not saying he didn't actually have any parents, but we have no record of them. So we have no record of how Melchizedek became a priest, but he seemingly, as it says, would apply about Jesus at least, he didn't make himself a priest. He didn't come up with it on his own and say, I'm going to exalt myself to be a priest. But he was appointed to be a priest. So he says, Christ did not exalt himself to be made a high priest. He was appointed to be a high priest by the Father. Dean, do you have something?
Well, who appointed him to me was God. Not because of the fact he was a priest of the Most High God.
Yeah.
So, in order for him to be the priest of the Most High God, God had to put him there.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Seems most logical, yeah.
And that's true with Christ. God chose Christ to be the priest after the order of Melchizedek.
Yeah. So you think about Melchizedek, again, just those 3 verses, that's it. I mean, he shows up in that aftermath of Abraham saving Lot from those enemies. He pops up. We have no record of a predecessor. We have no record of a successor to Melchizedek. We have no record of earthly parentage. We have nothing. Well, Jesus, of course, we have his earthly mother, but he was the only begotten of God in a special sense too. Melchizedek was kind of an only begotten in the sense that there he is. We don't know anything about his priesthood at that time, and then it's just that's it. Nobody takes his place. Nobody, follows after him and takes up the mantle. He is just one of a kind in that sense. Christ is one of a kind in the ultimate sense. And his priesthood will last forever. But going back to the priest and king thing, There are three main offices, you might say, in an Old Testament context. There's the king, priest, and prophet. We have records of some men who were a king and a prophet. David was one of them. Peter calls David a prophet in Acts chapter 2. David was a prophet, but he's also a king, but he was not a priest. We have record of king and priest. If nowhere else, Melchizedek was king and priest. Jesus, however, is the only man who ever satisfied all three roles. He was king, he is king, priest, and prophet, all at the same time. Only one to ever be that, which, as we pointed out, may not have even been possible, really, otherwise. But I think we're looking at, just to keep it simple, the only begotten aspect. That Melchizedek just sort of is his own category. Jesus is his own category. So he becomes sort of a type of Christ and is explicitly said to be, have a priesthood that's after the order of Melchizedek, which seems to put that above the Aaron priesthood and the Levitical priesthood. Yeah, Joe?
But Abraham gave him a tenth, which is a tithing,
Yeah.
which is also parallel to what the Hebrews were supposed to give God. So it almost makes Melchizedek, well, in fact, I think he's considered the greater over Abraham.
Yeah, he is. That's seen in the fact that he blesses Abraham
Right.
rather than being blessed. God had told Abraham, in you all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Well, here we see he meets Melchizedek, and it's not Abraham blessing Melchizedek, it's the other way around. And it's not Abraham giving Melchizedek giving Abraham of some stuff in homage. It's the other way around. So whoever he was seems to have been a pretty big deal, to say the least. And, our speculation and imagination could run wild about who he was. Was he even a real person? What if he's God? What if he's one of these pre-incarnate, instances of the Lord coming in human form, like in Genesis 18 or 19, whenever he shows up at Abraham's door? Could that be? Okay, sure, it could be. It could be. I don't see any reason to conclude that with any certainty, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility. It seems that he may be the single most mysterious character in the whole Bible, as far as human beings are concerned, for the reason that he just appears and then disappears, just like that. And then the fact that even though he just pops up and disappears, he has the honor of being a type of Christ. That's probably the greatest honor you could ever have. Yeah, David?
I guess maybe in the future in heaven, God will, if He chooses to, He can let us all know this is the Melchizedek.
Yeah.
That'll be the end of it.
Yeah. Get to heaven, it's like, all right, where's Melchizedek? I want to see him.
You don't have to worry about what he is.
Yeah. And the Lord might say, I got you. It was me the whole time. Yeah. Yeah, we don't know. Who knows? But at any rate, he typified him. He was like a shadow copy, one of these types of Christ. There are many types of Christ. Melchizedek is one of them. Priest and king of righteousness. Again, even his name is sort of a type of Christ, as Jesus is the ultimate king of righteousness. Also, a few verses later in Hebrews 5, he's mentioned again about he being designated by God a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. So not only seen in that psalm, but he says that God designated Christ a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. So, ding, ding, ding.
It's blood sugar.
Blood sugar. Warning, warning. I forgot I had that up there. It's supposed to already be up there. So, okay. Going once, going twice, Melchizedek. Had no beginning or end in the record, again, as far as the record. Not so with Methuselah. He almost didn't have an end. Seemed like. Methuselah. You know what Methuselah's legacy is? Oldest man to ever live. That's about it. I don't know if that's a compliment or what. It's like, oh, that's the only thing. Talk about not much said. And the only reason I'm even bringing Methuselah into this is because of something very interesting based on, one of my favorite things, numbers and math and stuff. But I say that sarcastically. It's not one of my favorite things. Did you have something else? About who?
Do you remember when you did the timeline?
That's what we're about to see now.
There you go.
Okay, we will see that. Okay, Methuselah is the man who lived the longest. As we know, before the flood, things were different. It's not exactly clear how or why they were different. There have been men who are much smarter than I am in scientific fields who have, sort of spitballed and speculated as to what it could have been that made seemingly the way the earth worked different before the flood. And I don't want to get lost in those weeds, but just long story short, it seems that the climate of the earth was different, worked different, had a whole different mechanic, everything before the flood. Because remember, it explicitly mentions how it hadn't rained before. Because there was some sort of arrangement, waters above the earth in the heavens that were unleashed at that time that provided more or less a greenhouse effect over the whole earth, unlike the way it is now. And it seems tied into that was people lived longer, a lot longer. And their childbearing years went much deeper into their lifetime. Yeah, Angie?
Does it also, it sounds to me like when God gave Noah instructions after they disembarked from the ark, that up to that point they weren't meteors.
Okay, yeah. It is in there that seems to suggest that maybe they didn't eat meat. But that changed as well, for whatever reason.
Where is that?
Somebody else will have to find that. I don't have that written here, but I don't remember exactly how it's worded. But somebody can find that. Now, we all probably know Methuselah. We've heard of him. We know of him. We know he was Noah's grandfather. Okay? But we're not told very much about him. In fact, Genesis chapter 5 is where he's found, and Genesis chapter 5 is a genealogy. But
It's not that it says that they didn't engage before the flood. It's just it said that there was no record of him giving people permission to eat meat until after the flood.
what's the verse though?
Genesis 9:1, where he says, where he gives them permission.
Okay. The text lends itself, I guess, for someone to maybe make that connection or draw that. It says, Genesis 9 verse 3 says, this is God speaking to Noah and his family. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. As I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. So but he says, but you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. So that would, as far as I'm concerned, seems to imply a change at that point. Now, I don't know if that has any connection to any, the longevity of life. I doubt it. But it does. There is a plausible scientific connection between what changed about the Earth's structure in the flood, also affecting us as living beings on the Earth. And that's the one theory as to why men lived longer before the flood, because the flood seems to be, it's not something that happened instantly, but after the flood, the life age, not in the big picture, happened pretty quickly, but gradually started becoming less and less and less and less until, fourscore and whatever, however it is mentioned. Yeah, Dean?
Well, too, we know that after the flood, looks like before the flood, the animals and mankind lived together. But in that verse 2, it says, the fear was put in the animals so that they feared mankind.
Mm-hmm.
Before the flood, it seemed like they didn't fear man, so they might say they lived in harmony
Yeah.
with each other. But so after the flood, to see that God kind of intervened is that He puts the fear of you, and the dread of the long beast. So it seems like God at this time, for whatever reason, He put the fear of man in the animals, so that they did not coexist. Like
Yeah.
they did before.
So it seems lots of things changed as a result. Now, Methuselah, okay? Methuselah was Noah's granddad. We don't know a single thing about him, okay, from the text, except that he lived 969 years. Now, I thought it was a decent or an interesting comment or speculation or possibility that based on the age of the life age, we don't know how Methuselah may have known, spoken with, let me find it here on the handout, even Adam, based on how long it was. But anyway, here's the thing about Methuselah. This is the thing Joe was just talking about, this chart, okay? I had to make this as an assignment for one of my classes many moons ago, based on Genesis chapter 5 and 13, where you got in the green, it's how old they were when the son that's mentioned was born. And the yellow is how long they lived after that. And then it doesn't apply in Adam's case, but the blue is their birth year from creation. Obviously, Adam was born the same time. So their birth year from creation, their years until their son was born, and then their years for the rest of their life. This red line is the flood, when the flood happened, based on this calculation of years. So from creation to the flood. About 1600 and I don't recall the exact number. 1656, I think, is the amount of years based on these genealogies in Genesis 5 and Genesis 11. I may have said 13. I meant 11, I guess. So look at Methuselah's line. Okay. If you count up the years, the blue years and the green years, and then I'll just go ahead and I'll blow this up a little bit for Methuselah's part. The blue years and the green years and the yellow years, his life goes right up to the red line because he died the same year as the flood happened. Now, that opens up a question. Why did Methuselah happen to die the same year as the flood? And there are only two options to that question. Number one, total coincidence. Number two, he died the year of the flood because he died in the flood. He could have died before. That's where the coincidence comes in. It's just coincidence that it happened to be that year. Now, we don't have any indication as to what kind of man he was, but it is possible that he was not a good man. Very possible. We read of men who had great parents and great children who were not great godly men themselves. And it is, I think, maybe the more popular idea that Methuselah died in the flood, just along with everybody else. Dean?
Well, because it says that he died, meaning seemingly that it was a specific time. And like I said, he would have died in the flood, he wouldn't say he died in the flood.
Yeah.
That's me, I
Yeah,
think it's the word,
Well,
that
it
it says that he died before the flood. Now, regardless of how wicked or how good he was, we know at that time, it says that every man intent, so he would have been included, I guess, in that statement there. So whether he was or not, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think since it says that he died at the age of 969, and to me, it seemed like he did die right before the flood. But, otherwise, if he would have died in the flood, it wouldn't have made any difference.
Yeah, the main difference it makes is if he died in the flood, then that speaks to his character. Yeah, but it's hard to tell because it's so zoomed out, and I'm not going to even try to do the math on the spot. But you can see from these lines, I say you can see, you might be able to see, I think it's there. Methuselah outlived his son. There's a little tiny space here between this yellow bar of Lamech and the flood. He died before the flood, but Methuselah died then at the year of the flood. So somebody can check the math there.
Do you think it also could be like a representation of how men could have been and why, and now it's changed, like kind of a, I don't know.
You mean their age? Their ages, their long life?
Since Methuselah ended up living so long, and then you look at Noah, and the grass is shorter. Maybe that's like a testament to how long God's, I guess, patience was.
Yeah. It certainly, I mean, you could draw a spiritual application there for sure. Things were different.
I've sort of wondered if it was distance from the tree of life.
That could be, yeah.
Post-flood, no one would have had the benefit of having that around.
Oh, too, when Adam was born, how old was he? He was a full man. So, it goes from the day he lived to be 930 years. Well, if he was a full man when he was born, could you might say, well, he's not 30 years, but he was getting closer.
Yeah.
Especially though, if they lived to be 900, it might be more than that, what you think. But regardless of it, we have just a history, a record of it, and Moses is recording a lot of this, but he didn't live at that time, and it was all being recorded to him, told to him, and a lot of it is just the fact that it's just the timeline that, some people try to, like you say nowadays, whether he died in the flood or before the flood
Mm-hmm.
or that. And it really doesn't matter. All it is the fact that it says that when he did die. And there's some things that we don't know, and it's not meant for us to know. And regardless, so it's, you can believe one way or the other. If you want to believe it that way, that's fine. I mean, it really doesn't matter as far as our eternal salvation. It don't matter if you believe that he died in the flood or not.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, it don't make any difference. So there's so many people though, they will, in the church, that they will take these things and try to prove that, just for their own belief, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no real consequence to one way or the other, but it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting to think about these things, and it's just when you do that math and put that together, and it's like, wait a minute, he died the exact same year of the flood. It's like,
He's too old to go through it.
yeah. I mean, if he lived 969 years, I bet he could have gotten to 1,000. But he didn't. And there might be a reason why he didn't. Just saying, yeah. Yeah. That is worthy of note. Where was he? Now, like I said, Noah's father died before. Not very long before. I mean, it's almost right up there. Coming right up to the time when the flood was about to begin, Noah's father Lamech would have already been dead. Methuselah, though, was still alive. Where was he? The only answer we have to that is he wasn't with Noah. So there is that, at least. So could it be that Methuselah died the year of the flood because he died in the flood? If you've seen the movie Noah, I brought it up before. Don't watch it. It's awful. It's silly. I can't emphasize enough how disrespectful it is to the text. But built into that, one of the scenes that stuck with me, except for the ridiculous way that Noah finds out about the flood, as presented in that movie, which is literally absurd. He does go talk to Methuselah, granddad. Noah goes and visits granddad, and he's sort of presented as sort of just being out there doing his own thing, not too worried about anything as far as I can recall. But he certainly was not along with Noah for the ride, no pun intended. But that's one thing we know for a fact. Methuselah was not on the ark. So whether he died before, of old age, or he died with the rest of the wicked world, we can't say. We'll know someday. I hope for his sake he died faithfully, or died faithful beforehand, but there's just no way to know. It is interesting though, the time frame there. He happened to be the person that 969 years. What a horrible number to have to end on. Just what, 31 away from the big 1,000. 31, right? You mean I got a math problem right for once? I'll take his word for it. Question my math. I'm on your side. You did it too hard. You oversolved it. Yeah, David? Eve? Yeah. You would think. Yeah, the Bible is very careful about recording women's ages. I don't know, maybe there's something to that. I think there's only one woman. I can't remember who. I think we've already looked at her. It has slipped my mind. One woman in the whole Bible whose age is mentioned. Okay. Maybe I'm talking about her when they died. But you'll have to check me on that.
Maybe that's why women are sensitive to their age.
Maybe. God knows you ladies as much as He knows us. That's why He left the ages out.
righteous man and walked with God.
Mhm.
And that generation was evil. But does that mean everybody was evil at that time? Or does it just mean that I'm starting over and I'm starting with this guy? In other words, it's not a
If there had to be
condemnation.
children and babies were not, they obviously were not evil.
They were taken care of.
They would have been saved even though they died in the flood.
Yeah, the children. Yeah.
So they're obviously, not everybody who died in the flood.
Exactly.
These are questions that
Died in the flood was,
there is no answer. This is one of those just be glad you're not God instances. Yeah. God is God and you are not, and
And he does all
thank you, God, for being God.
Has anyone ever estimated the population of the earth at the time of the flood?
Yes, and it has, I don't know about a specific number, but a pretty good case has been made that based on the age and the years of childbirth being so, unfathomably beyond today. What's the cutoff today before they say there could be issues? Like 40s?
geriatric after 35.
Okay, considered geriatric after 35 years old, which was a baby to them, basically. It has been estimated or speculated that the population of the earth at the time of the flood could have been the almost exact same as today, because people lived so much longer and were able to bear children so much longer into their lives that it would not have taken long to build up the population of the earth to numbers pretty comparative to today. So billions of people. Because of the age and the childbearing years. So, and the fact that even, in more recent biblical times, like in the New Testament, first century stuff, they generally seem to have more children than most people do today. So, the replacement rate was much higher, much healthier back then than it is today. So, it has been estimated that the population could have been comparable to today at the time of the flood.
But I didn't think they counted children before the age of 2 because they died. There was a lot of mortality in birth.
What do you mean they counted children?
Well, didn't the Jews not,
This is before the
when,
Jews, but
when he gave how much a person was worth at whatever age,
I don't
if you
know.
were over 60, they weren't.
You've lost me.
Well, God deemed a monetary value to some of these people.
Okay.
But before the age of 2, they didn't names whatever.
But at the same time, when you look at it, the reason that God flooded the earth was because of I would assume it was because of the lack of respect for life.
Yeah, the wickedness of man.
I don't think it would have really, I don't think they would have had that limit on kids.
God knows what He's doing, and everything that He does is right. So if everything God does is right, then that means the flood was right. So there are questions that we can't answer, but we don't have to answer because we're not God. And the end of the day, whatever God does is right, always. And He's God. It's His prerogative. He knows what's best. And at that time, in those circumstances, that was what was best. And He didn't want to do it. It's not like He was hoping that this would happen. It just had to happen. And that's why it says He grieved. It grieved Him in His heart that it had come to that. But for Methuselah's sake, hopefully he died of old age, being faithful to God. But again, we have no record of his faith or lack thereof. It's just, there he is. Mm-hmm.
We've been taught that Noah preached for 120 years, but we really don't know that. Because, Noah, it took him that long to build the ark, but Noah, I don't think, had the right to invite people on the
Well, I mean,
God would have decided to not have to use the ark in his preaching if people had listened to the message.
a lot of questions there. I mean, Noah, we're told, in, 1 Peter 3, that Noah preached. It's a controversial verse because it talks about, or not Noah, but it says Jesus, preached to the souls in prison or whatever. It's generally understood that that's a reference to the people of Noah's day that had a chance, but they ignored it. So they were not obedient back then, and so they're in prison now because they're lost. They died lost because they weren't obedient to that word. But the 120 years, I think part of that comes in from Genesis chapter 6, where it says, God says, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years." And it is, there are two schools of thought on that. Man can't live beyond 120, which I think has already been debunked in real life. But another is, he's saying that's a reference to it's going to be 120 years until I put an end to this, which certainly fits more in the context, I think, of Genesis chapter 6. But that would mean that, there was 120 years from that time to when the flood actually came. And, but we already, we'll be looking at Noah when the time comes, and we can get more into that. We're almost there. Methuselah, Noah will be here soon enough.